There's a time period in WWE history where a price tag received one of the biggest pushes of all time. For just $9.99, you could subscribe to the WWE Network. At your fingertips were thousands upon thousands of hours of archival footage, classic and current pay-per-views, documentaries, original content, and live events. This was the innovation that helped define what the company was in the second half of the 2010s. Think about the world today. Everything is dominated by streaming. Apple Music, Disney+, Netflix, Spotify, even where you are right now. People want their videos their way, and so before the boom, before even sports teams were returning to specialty networks to house their content, WWE saw what was to come and got in the game at the perfect time. It was a no-brainer, a global brand with a worldwide audience, the future of cable TV and pay-per-view uncertain, and towns worth of footage to chuck on to whatever this service ended up being. If you look at Vince McMahon's adventures throughout time, it doesn't take long to see that he's tried to give his company the biggest possible reach, whether it's succeeded or not, branching out into different areas that all centrally lead back to WWE. The XFL, WWF New York, the unopened hotel and casino, and come the year 2000, an attempt at creating a standalone cable TV channel for his company. That's the year where WWF left the USA Network for TNN. Originally, they wanted to acquire the Sci-Fi channel and rebrand it to the Wrestling Only channel, but they got punted with a lawsuit for breach of contract by USA. Linda McMahon was flat out told by the network's president that she would never get anybody to give her a network. The lawsuit coming in because WWE canceled their TV distribution agreement with USA and instead signed with TNN, getting sued for talking to Viacom behind their back. The court ruled in their favor, so it was okay. For now, it wouldn't be, but the idea remained on the back burner. Just a few years later, on November 2nd, 2004, came the launch of an on-demand service called WWE 24/7. You might know this as Classics on Demand. Every month you'd get around 40 hours worth of classic WCW, ECW, and WWF content, and all of these would have subcategories or programming buckets behind them. Old school were recorded house shows, big ones were pay-per-views, specials were home video and network specials. By 2007, this sat at 115,000 subscribers, so while they didn't fully have their concept come to life, it was a launching point for what could be. If you're a Big Four sports fan, you know at this time the three-letter sports league followed by network were pumping out everywhere. NFL Network launched in 2003, NHL Network in 2007, MLB Network in 2009, and just to ruin the consistency, NBA TV in 1999. The layups were to rebroadcast old games of significance, repackage clips for countdown shows, and then have a hybrid of current day happenings as well. WWE in 2011 put out a survey asking people if they would pay for their content and archive, with them doing away with the normal pay-per-view price, also getting WWE Studios movies and original programming as a premium channel. The network was supposed to launch on April 1st, 2012, the same day as WrestleMania 28, using the mainstream buzz of Rock and Cena to their benefit. There was a countdown clock on WWE.com winding down to the days of launch, which suddenly disappeared. The lack of readiness had a lot of people skeptical at what could happen. There were some who believed that they were getting ahead of things like falling pay-per-view buy rates. Others said that they could be in financial hell if this flopped. There was also backlash from fans and cable companies who didn't like the traditional method being cannibalized. One of the downsides brought up was that they were shooting themselves in the foot by bringing down revenues from their own pay-per-views, which were still very lucrative. Then there were the people who were calling it a service for a highly niche audience, that it would only fly if they developed entertaining concepts that weren't matches. They toyed around with how they wanted to present this. The launch was delayed to fall of the same year, and it was reported that since WWE Studios wasn't doing so hot, rushing in with a limited timeline could fall flat on its face. Then things took a turn with it coming out that it would be a premium pay TV outlet with a price of $15, similar to the sports channels I just mentioned. Details then came out that this would not be available through cable companies. It flip-flopped back and forth, and the reason given was that they were trying to take their time to identify what would be their best move. Everywhere you looked, someone had something different to say. When the dust settled on January 8th, 2014 at CES in Las Vegas, Vince McMahon officially announced the WWE Network. He said this was the first of its kind, calling it a television experience like none other, a living, evolving testament to where WWE has been and where they're going. The service would be the first to launch with a 24/7 linear TV channel, 720p streaming with iOS, Android, game consoles, and Roku, with more support coming later on. But the biggest part of all of this was the unveiling of original programming. Every single WWE, WCW, and ECW pay-per-view would be there, a glimpse into WWE's future with NXT. Take 8 WWE legends and force them to live under one roof and watch as hilarity ensues with Legends House. WrestleMania Rewind was the greatest matches in its history, and the stories behind them told to you by the wrestlers that were in them. WWE Countdown was an interactive show where fans voted on polls, with each episode having a different theme. The Monday Night War, Raw, and SmackDown archives were an easy layup, and all 12 WWE pay-per-views for the entire year streaming live. It took a while for them to get everything up, there were some programming gaps, but all in all, this was a time machine for WWE fans. An all-access pass to the promotion, its history, and their vast library. They promised to add legacy content each and every month. The date of launch was just over a month later on February 24th, 2014. John Cena announced that after Monday Night Raw, 11:05 Eastern, this would go live, and the first pay-per-view of the network era would be none other than WrestleMania 30. A few days later, WWE Classics on Demand was shut down. In 2014, if you were to buy every show on pay-per-view, it would cost you almost $700. With this, you could save $580, paying just $120 for the entire year. At this time, WWE still had the scratch mark logo that they rebranded to in 2002, with the network one being more modern and eventually what we know it as today. I find stats interesting, but I don't want to bog the whole thing down with them either. Speaking on what they wanted to achieve, WWE Network was a failure and they were bleeding money. 1 million subscribers was this glorious number that they always talked about needing to break even, with the overall goal being 3 to 4 million. I'll circle back to that in a bit, but after the quick turnaround, WWE Network was set for launch, and like usual with these things, not everything went smoothly. Buffering problems, sign in and up problems. On the first day, orders weren't even being processed properly. This new innovative service was here, and WWE did not shy away from promoting their own product as much as they possibly could. The commentators reminding you after seemingly every match and commercial to a comical degree that this was just $9.99. Promo segments making sure to get the point across that this was just $9.99. CFOs who produced the company's music at the time even created a jingle reminding you that this was just $9.99. They beat fans over the head with this price, showing you tutorials on how to sign up, mentioning it wherever and whenever they could. They used two slogans to market the network. The first was "It's way over the top," and the second, "It's like Netflix, only better." At the end of April, they hadn't reached their goal of 1 million subscribers, and they were only at 667,000. Their stock fell almost 50%, which really made people worry that this would be yet another failure after the company spent nearly $70 million on it. This started to have its effect across the company, especially since their TV rights deal didn't bring in as much money as they thought. WWE Magazine was shut down, Pyro was scaled back, investment in stage design was significantly less, and layoffs became very common because of the high operating costs. They started to offer a preview week to rake people in during the summer. They also dropped the 6-month requirement, allowing people to opt out at any time, thinking that this was one of the reasons that the growth was being stunted. This brought the number in the neighborhood of 700 to 730K, still about 300,000 short of the 1 million domestic goal that they wanted to reach by WrestleMania 30. There were even reports that Vince McMahon could scrap the network altogether and go back to the original plan. It was not a good time for them. They estimated that with how slow it was growing, the company could lose about $20 million in 2014. As of now, the network was only available in the US, but then the international rollout started. Canada got it in August of the same year as a premium pay TV channel. Fans in the UK had it real bad as it got delayed time and time again. The original launch was supposed to be October 1st, then it was delayed to November 3rd, and about 20 minutes before it was scheduled to go live, it was delayed again before they eventually got it on January 19th, 2015, with Vince McMahon even putting out an apology video. The delay was due to, as WWE put it, ongoing discussions with partners, since they were trying to make this similar to the Canadian version where fans in the UK would get it through a certain broadcast company. In August of 2014, they announced expansion to 170 countries and territories. The rollout was hot and heavy, and so was the backlash. They hit 1 million subscribers in January of 2015, but it was also that same month where we had the mess that was the Royal Rumble main event. We've already talked about this one in depth, but after Roman Reigns won, the hashtag cancel WWE Network started to trend on Twitter, and the cancellation page even crashed. WrestleMania 31 was the first of this new modernized era. The stage had the play button as the centerpiece and the red branding, a balance between Santa Clara being the home of Nvidia and WWE fully embracing the digital age. Later in 2015, a report came out that the network had broken to the top 5 of streaming services. Netflix was 1, Amazon came 2nd, 3rd was Hulu, MLB.TV at 4, and rounding things out were WWE. But what really made this wasn't the numbers, it wasn't any controversy, it wasn't any funny marketing or insane shilling, it was all about the content. WWE Network's greatest strength was its library, the shows that ended up seeing the light of day, and even more interestingly, the ones that didn't. They tried to make this have something for every type of WWE fan, new or old, injecting it with personality and giving you everything you'd want and then some. If you want to learn about wrestling history, they had it. If you want reality TV shows, they had them. If you want animated shows, prank shows, if you wanted to learn the details behind wrestlers' tattoos, documentaries on the biggest and smallest events in company history, or if you just want to unwind, watch a random Raw from 2003, it was right there. This service had mountains worth of content. The summer of 2015 was monstrous for the network. This is when they put their foot on the gas and just started to drop everything. Not only doing this for the sake of getting content out, but having an identity. In today's day and age, we pay more for less. This was the inverse. Camp WWE was one of the most memorable shows that came to life, essentially their version of South Park, an adult-oriented comedy by Seth Green where wrestlers were dropped off at summer camp. This series is something straight from Adult Swim. Everyone has their common tropes. Triple H says after every sentence. John Cena wants his mom and dad. Stone Cold raises hell. Big Show is the butt of every joke because he's big, and Vince McMahon is Vince McMahon. Swerve was one where the talent were put into different environments and pulled pranks on their fellow wrestlers. From gyms to WrestleMania access to the Hall of Fame ceremony, they set up some pretty elaborate scenarios just to hit the punchline at the end that the other person had been swerved. From corrupt security guards not letting Seth Rollins back in the building because they had no idea who he was, wrestlers thinking they were going in for interviews only to be electrocuted by a chair, and even Vince McMahon getting in on the action by going undercover. Table for Three was a roundtable discussion with some sort of central theme, either with the talent who were featured in the episode or something shared amongst them. They just reminisce, telling stories about way back when, giving fans tidbits on what we thought we knew and what we didn't know. The Monday Night War was an in-depth look at when WCW and WWF went at it at the tail end of the 90s. The Edge and Christian show that totally reeks of awesomeness had 2 seasons, skits, shenanigans, and sketch comedy. This one was fun because of all the cameos and tomfoolery they'd get up to. Reality shows like Holy Foley, where Mick and his daughter navigate everyday life as she dates a clown. Stone Cold's podcast was put onto here, and they used the end of Raw as a lead-in so fans could switch over. Ride Along was advertised to no end. In this one, they had a camera inside the wrestlers' cars as they drove to the hotel or next city that they were performing in. You would just get silly banter between the carpoolers, and sometimes you'd get ridiculousness taking place. When you have hungry, tired wrestlers, there's a lot that happens. WWE Storytime, WWE Untold, Talking Smack. The 24 documentaries are genuinely some of the best things the company has ever produced. These, no matter the episode, no matter the topic, always have the production value and storytelling. In 2020, they released an in-depth miniseries called Undertaker: The Last Ride. This brought us behind the scenes as we saw what he was going through in his wrestling journey, from his body deteriorating and unmatched love for the business. And for the first time, we really got a true look at the man who, for the most part, wasn't seen in this light. I know I'd get in trouble if I didn't mention the Ruthless Aggression series. That one came out the same year, where we got a piece-by-piece breakdown from the company needing to reset, to the rise of the OVW4, to the brand split Civil War, and they also took us through character reinventions as well. A lot of the stuff I just mentioned is series-based, but what would this be if not for the in-ring action? For a lot of fans, the network was at its absolute peak in 2016 when WWE produced the Cruiserweight Classic, a 32-man tournament that featured stars from anywhere and everywhere under 205 pounds. From Full Sail University, Daniel Bryan and Mauro Ranallo called all the action, and that was the bread and butter of this tournament, the in-ring action. Gargano versus Ciampa, Zack Sabre Jr. versus Drew Gulak, and of course Cedric Alexander versus Kota Ibushi, which led to the crowd chanting "Please sign Cedric," and him getting a WWE contract. It was this perfect blend of indie talent, international stars, and you even had some faces of the past like Tajiri and Brian Kendrick. TJ Perkins won it all and became the first Cruiserweight champion as they were brought back to Raw. The next year we got the first of back-to-back Mae Young Classics, and these two pools are littered with wrestlers who continue to shine in WWE and elsewhere. Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, Io Sky, Toni Storm, just to name a few. Kairi Sane beating Shayna Baszler in the first one. The next year it was Toni Storm beating Io Shirai. With these tournaments, a nice add-on you had was bracketology, where all the competitors were broken down for you. This was very helpful in discovering new wrestlers and learning more about the ones that you may have already seen. Then what many consider the crown jewel of the network, NXT. Part of the deal was getting to see the next ones up every week for an hour from Full Sail. Who's making waves in developmental, who's primed to get called up, who's the new big signing that the company had made. It was exciting to see the faces that would define the future. Arrival aired just a few days after the launch of the network, and these very quickly evolved into NXT takeovers. These shows were an unbelievable bang for your buck. In-ring quality-wise, they put the main roster to shame 10 times over. There was a point where each and every one would outdo the last, and you'd have a new contender for show of the year. NXT overall just became a community almost, where fans saw it go from the show that it was in 2014 through the 2010s and just hit this unbelievable peak that made $9.99 more than worth it, especially when the main roster was so dire. NXT UK and the United Kingdom tournaments deserve a shout as well. I feel as though people seem to forget they also had takeovers, but everyone just jumps on the bandwagon of Bate versus Walter and completely discount all the other amazing matches that we got. The network was the one place where they could host whatever they wanted. It was a one-stop shop for everything, with even Raw and SmackDown available through about a 1-month delay. 205 Live, photo shoot, breaking ground, specials like Beast in the East, Rivalries, Slam City, Hidden Gems, Music Power 10, Superstar Inc., short form or long form. They populated the platform with endless video content. Pre-shows, post-shows, recap shows. You even got to see things that were never broadcast to a national audience, since WWE had been collecting tape libraries from regional companies. But what I found more interesting was the shows that never came to pass. In 2016, a survey was sent out listing 21 concepts. A lot of these were a WWE spin on well-known mainstream shows, with some of these actually being developed. For example, WWE's Most Wanted Treasures on A&E was originally conceptualized as Everyone Has a Price. Ms. and Mrs. was on the list, and that one was actually called Ms. and Mrs. On the list was also WWE Kids. They actually shot a pilot for NXT Kids, which you should definitely seek out because it's hilarious. They have kids on commentary and they're a complete riot, thirsting over Billie Kay and later going on to ask Corey Graves who he'd take on a date, either her or Bailey.
So Corey, who would you rather go out with? Jesse or Bailey?
It's just a kidified version of the show, with even the commercials being dubbed over. The other shows in the survey were Extreme Eats with Tommy Dreamer and Bubba Ray Dudley as they tour America showing off their favorite food locations. Seems like essentially the WWE version of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives with Guy Fieri. A sequel to the original Legends House, but this time stars from the Attitude Era. The third wheel was 2 wrestling fans going on a blind date and a superstar joining them. 50 states, 50 dates, a WWE bachelor going on 50 dates to find love. Totally NXT was pitched as this hybrid between the Diva Search and Tough Enough, where the winner would get a main roster contract and also become a member of Total Divas. Easily the craziest one thrown out was The Wives of Flair, which would be a documentary series on the love life of Ric Flair and his 4 ex-wives, among others like WWE Roast and Goldberg's Garage. There's also series that never saw the light of day that aren't on this survey, like Somebody Loves Santino in the early 2010s. WWE Network continued to produce content from collections to uploads of old documentaries, clips from the archives, hidden gems. You had your watch lists, podcasts, reality shows, indie wrestling. With the subscription, they also sent out feelers on trying to make this more exclusive and beneficial to those who subscribed, almost like they wanted to give others FOMO. They wanted to see if special perks could enhance paying the $9.99 price. The network was yet to have offline viewing. That was one of the things. As a subscriber, they teased that advanced sales of things like video games, tickets, and travel packages would be available to you before non-subscribers. For the Hall of Fame, they floated out the idea of fans being able to vote in the inductees, as well as different price models and discounts to Hulu. One of the things that fans miss the most about the network is the user interface. Everything was organized in a logical manner and it was easy to navigate and find what you were looking for. WWE.com was also integrated into the search engine, which was fantastic. It was simple and very well designed. Plus, shows were broken down into matches and segments, with the chapters allowing you to jump back and forth to whatever you wanted to dive into. Instead of seasons, they were organized by year and show name. It was a one-stop central hub. Hop out of one thing right into another, find something you didn't even know about, and all of a sudden you're going down the rabbit hole and learning so much more. The UI, depending on what device you were using, was different. They continued to crank things out. By 2018, WWE announced that they had 2.1 million subscribers on the service, with 1.8 of them being paid. In 2019, they signed with a company called Endeavor Streaming, owned by the people who eventually went on to buy the brand and form TKO. That summer, they launched a new revamped version of the service with 1080p streaming and website integration. Previously, they had Major League Baseball's advanced media. In the fall, NXT was pulled from the network and moved to USA, and this was just the beginning of the end for the network. When the pandemic came around, WWE introduced a free tier. In August of 2020, the company confirmed that they had acquired tape libraries from Evolve, WXW, Progress, and ICW. Earlier in the year, they had made every single WrestleMania free, thinking that this would kill two birds with one stone. People at home would watch, and it would pique their interest to subscribe and maybe even watch more. The streaming service capped out and Vince McMahon cashed in. As the streaming wars took off, content became king. Anywhere the WWE moved, a loyal fan base would follow. There was more money to be made in selling content for others to pop on their platform and not have the headache of maintaining your own. The two people who were instrumental in the network being what it was were Michelle Wilson and George Barrios. They were let go in 2020 and in came Nick Khan. In January of 2021, WWE signed a 5-year deal worth over $1 billion for Peacock to host their content. Starting that year, they started to phase out the network and transition the content to local rights holders. The thought process was essentially there would be more eyeballs elsewhere. Non-WWE fans might accidentally stumble across wrestling content they liked and vice versa. Peacock cleaned up a lot of the company's moments that might be considered controversial or inappropriate. The full move was to be completed by August of the same year. A perk they got was there would be a Peacock exclusive documentary produced annually. This only affected people in the US, as everywhere else the network was still a thing. Fast forward to 2024 and things changed rapidly. WWE announced a 10-year deal with Netflix. In the United States, this would be home to Monday Night Raw starting January 6th. Plus, they'd also air SmackDown, NXT, and premium live events internationally. I hope I'm not the only one who doesn't call them premium live events when it's not part of a video. Pay-per-view. It's a pay-per-view, even though it's not a pay-per-view. I can't come around to calling it a PLE. It can't make its way into my vocabulary. As a result, on January 1st, 2025, WWE Network in most countries was shut down after an 11-year run. The entire network library did not move over. In fact, as the recording of this video, the Raw and SmackDown vaults on Netflix are genuinely atrocious. They're missing years and years worth of shows. Whether there'll be staggered releases or not, that remains to be seen. Today, the WWE Vault channel uploads a lot of the content that probably won't make its way to the Netflix library. It acts as a funnel for all the programming I mentioned earlier. However, there's also many things that won't see the light of day or might get lost in the YouTube shuffle. Think about the content farm that is WWE, how much they put out daily, how much they put out weekly, how much they put out monthly. Their videos live in a lot of different places all over the internet opposed to one central site. The thing is, the organization and overall polish of slowly dumping things onto YouTube just isn't the same as having a dedicated hub like we once did. Episodes being skipped, the order of what comes out and when it releases all over the place, multiple channels to keep an eye on, and them not releasing videos with certain wrestlers involved. Whereas when stuff was on the network, it didn't get spotlighted as a new upload involving anyone who might be blacklisted from the company. Podcasts are on multiple different channels, full events on others, weekly programming on Netflix and USA and CW. It's a lot to keep track of with how social media heavy the company is and how they farm videos. I also need to give a quick mention to physical media and how, because of WWE ending DVD releases back in 2023, it's up to them how and where they release their content. There are certain people who would rather own than pay for multiple streaming services, and even then possibly not get the videos that they want. Then came another big change and stray away from the glory of the network. In August of 2025, WWE announced a 5-year deal worth $1.6 billion for premium live events to move to ESPN in the US, starting with WrestlePalooza on September 20th. Depending on your cable package, this brought back a high price tag for watching WWE at $30 a month. And that was when the phrase "you don't know what you have till it's gone" really fit the situation. Today, even though the network still does exist in a small variety of markets, it will slowly completely shut down, and that will make it the project that was. A massively ambitious one at that. WWE set out to create their own version of Netflix with a signature catalog of shows, a catch-all featuring the past, present, and future of the industry. They experimented with different concepts and shows that we might not have gotten if this never was. It revolutionized how we watch WWE, and as time moves forward, people appreciate the network for all of its innovative glory. Thanks for watching.